This is not a drill. A North Korean missile has been fired at Hokkaido. The message over the tannoy, take cover. It was recorded by Joe Narciso.
There were designated evacuation centers. There were, you take cover on basements, but essentially we cannot do anything about it once the missile would hit. So I think that we just have to psych ourselves that this is really happening, and we have to be mindful of our surrounding when it happens.
This is the 18th missile to be launched by North Korea this year alone, and this one flew over Japan's northern island. South Korean officials say the missile broke into 3 pieces before falling into the North Pacific. It flew for more than 1,600 miles. It's the first time Kim Jong-un has launched a missile over Japanese territory since 2009. And the country's prime minister said his government is taking all possible measures to ensure people's safety.
The missile, which passed over our nation, represents the greatest and gravest threat to our nation ever. It's also a threat to the peace and stability of the Asia-Pacific region. We have lodged a strong protest with North Korea to that effect. A call for the emergency meeting of the UN's Security Council, and while working with the international community, will demand even stronger measures against North Korea at the United Nations.
Earlier this month, North Korea threatened to fire missiles towards the US territory of Guam. This provoked the US president into threats of war, perhaps nuclear war.
North Korea best not make any more threats to the United States. They will be met with fire and fury like the world has never seen.
And South Korea released footage of its latest missile defense systems. The UN Security Council is now expected to hold an emergency meeting later today. That's little comfort to those who know that they now live within range of a North Korean missile system that its leader wants to arm with a nuclear warhead.
Pentagon has confirmed that North Korea launched a missile that flew over Japan.
Now, the news comes as South Korean intelligence also suggests that North Korea could be prepping for its 6th nuclear weapons test. Officials say they see new activity at its nuclear test site. And North Korean officials have dialed up the rhetoric against the U.S. as it carries out annual war games with South Korea.
This represents a major escalation in tensions over North Korea's missile program, since all the other launches in recent years have been fired at a high enough angle that they would always come down in the Sea of Japan, short of Japanese territory. This time, the Japanese government had to warn civilians living in northern Japan to take shelter, and a Japanese government official called it an unprecedented, grave threat.
The U.S. Missile Defense Agency says the Japanese government alerted the public to take cover in the northern areas of Japan where the North Korean missile flew over, and it says the Japanese military did not attempt to intercept that North Korean missile.
The latest provocation from North Korea, reports of a new ballistic missile launch, this one passing over Japanese airspace. ABC's chief international correspondent Terry Moran joins me now from London. And Terry, what do we know about this missile and the response in the region?
Tom, this is another serious escalation. North Korea firing a missile that crossed over Japanese airspace, something it's done before, but not without warning or at a time of such escalating tension. So the ballistic missile was launched from near Pyongyang and flew east, passing over Japan before landing in the ocean off Hokkaido. Japan's government went on high alert, actually warning people in the north to take cover. It's the latest in a series of provocations from North Korea, which recently tested an intercontinental ballistic missile experts say may be capable of reaching major U.S. cities. North Korean dictator Kim Jong-un has been seen celebrating his recent missile launches, and in response, President Trump has threatened to confront new signs of aggression from North Korea with, quote, fire and fury.
This is the 18th missile fired by North Korea since the start of the year and comes just days after President Trump warned North Korea not to do more. This is what he said at a rally on Tuesday.
Kim Jong-un, I respect the fact that I believe he is starting to respect us. I respect that fact very much. Respect that fact. And maybe, probably not, but maybe something positive can come about.
The timing of the missile being fired tonight coincides with the 10 days of military exercises between U.S. forces and South Korean forces. The North Korean diplomats at the UN tonight have complained and called for the UN Security Council to investigate those exercises. They claim that those are provocative exercises, that they are practice for an invasion. What's also notable about tonight's missile launch is that it comes also just days after Secretary of State Rex Tillerson had suggested that UN sanctions had changed Kim Jong-un's behavior. Here's what he said.
I think it is worth noting that we have had no missile launches or provocative acts on the part of North Korea since the unanimous adoption of the UN Security Council resolution. And I want to take note of that. I want to acknowledge it. I am pleased to see that the regime in Pyongyang has certainly demonstrated some level of restraint.
Looks like the tensions are escalating there. We've got former Air Force Assistant Vice Chief of Staff. He's retired Lieutenant General Thomas McInerney. He joins me now. General, what are your thoughts on this?
Well, I'm very disturbed by it, Liz, as you would realize, because we don't have the specific details. I've heard anything from it flew over and then broke up, or it landed in the waters nearby. We haven't gotten confirmation out of PACOM, Pacific Command, or out of the Pentagon. But I think you're showing some good information. Now, I think it's probably a B-roll and is not the actual picture, so we want to make sure our viewers understand that. Well, but it is very worrisome.
Yeah, Japanese authorities set off an emergency alert system as a precaution as the missile headed toward the country. Again, North Korea firing a missile that flew over Japan and landed in the sea. What is this going to do with the tensions there now?
Well, I think it's going to increase them. It's clearly pushing Japan towards some self-defense or deterrent capability. And it should. They have nothing to respond, Liz. So they're going to have to make a decision. Are they going to build a response capability to any threat from North Korea?
And South Korea Joint Chiefs of Staff says the missile was fired from Sunan near Pyongyang at 5:57 a.m. South Korea time. The JCS says the missile flew directly over the northern Japanese island of Hokkaido and fell into the North Pacific Ocean. The Pentagon also confirmed the missile that it flew over Japan's territory, adding that it's still assessing the launch. The missile flew some 2,700 kilometers, reaching an altitude of 550 kilometers. And experts say the North probably fired the missile to demonstrate that it's capable of targeting the U.S. territory of Guam at any given moment. The distance between Pyongyang and Guam is some 3,000 kilometers away. At the height of U.S.-North Korea tensions earlier this month, North Korea threatened to launch 4 intermediate ballistic missiles into waters near Guam to show it's capable of targeting U.S. military bases on the island. Now, Japan, which sounded sirens in certain regions upon news of the launch, is deeply concerned by the escalation, but made no effort to shoot down the missile. Now, Japan's Chief Cabinet Secretary Yoshihide Suga described it as an unprecedented grave threat, and Prime Minister Shinzo Abe vowed to protect the Japanese public in the wake of this provocation. Now, this comes after the North launched 3 short-range ballistic missiles into the East Sea over the weekend.
What's notable about the timing of this, and I've spoken to senior U.S. officials who said that they had seen some sort of movement that suggested that the North Koreans were preparing for an intermediate-range ballistic missile, but they weren't sure whether that was going to come. They were surprised that it came today. Remember, there are 10 days of military exercises taking place right now in South Korea between the U.S. military and the South Korean military. Those exercises are slated to end on Wednesday. Those exercises are annual exercises. They have angered Kim Jong-un, the leader of North Korea. And what's notable is just last week, Secretary of State Rex Tillerson had praised the North Korean leader, saying that, in fact, he had shown a great deal of restraint. But then you saw over the weekend he fired 3 missiles. 2 of them were short range. 1 of them failed of the 3. So I believe that this is time to coincide with those military exercises with South Korea. Back to you.
Jennifer, do we know how or even when we can expect to hear from the White House on this?
Well, I know that the White House has called over here to the Pentagon to get the latest intelligence on this. Right now, U.S. Pacific Command and others are trying to gather the data on this missile launch, and so they will be communicating that to the White House. The White House will want to wait, of course, until they have that information because there will be a lot of decisions based on this.
Jennifer, for your time covering North Korea and from your perspective, are we in a different place with North Korea than we previously have been?
It certainly feels like it is, that tension is ratcheting up. There's what feels like a very dangerous game of chicken, almost a dare taking place, and Kim Jong-un continues to try to show that he is still in power and in control and able to fire these missiles. But certainly the range of these missiles has gotten the attention, and the capabilities in the last 6 months of what we've seen has gotten the attention of those who watch these things here at the Pentagon and elsewhere.
Jennifer, just a quick final question. You talk about Secretary of State Tillerson and what sounds like very diplomatic tone he took last week. Can you give any anticipation about what that diplomacy will look like moving forward?
Well, I think that you're going to see a very tough line from not only the White House. Tillerson had praised those UN sanctions. The Security Council had imposed unanimously sanctions against North Korea, and that was significant. That was an achievement. But it is clear that it is not deterring Kim Jong-un, so now they're going to have to go back to the drawing board on this.